Thank you, Stephen. This is so exciting to be back, right? This is the first time we've had a Rikard lecture in 2 years. So congratulations for getting here. I'm very excited. Thank you, Stephen, very much for the introduction. I also want to start off by thanking the Rikard family. I always notice that I'm a little shorter than most people I'm graduating, so excuse me as I bring that down. I do want to thank the Rikard family for their steadfast support for this lecture series. And we're really pleased to bring in a wide variety of speakers that really make a difference for our students, so thank you. I also want to thank all of you for joining us today. We're excited to have, again, an in-person event. And as many of you know, we've started our new strategic plan. We've just finished our strategic plan and we're implementing it now. It's moving the university forward, and what we're trying to do, which has become a university that's both distinctive and distinguished in Atlanta and beyond. And we aspire to do this through a spirit of innovation and entrepreneurship. So we're very, very fortunate today to have with us our speaker, David Cummings, who through his work with Atlanta Tech Village has distinguished himself as a trailblazer in innovation, entrepreneurship, and building community connections. David took a burgeoning idea and developed a robust ecosystem of thinkers, creatives, and innovators by creating a space for them to relentlessly pursue noble ideas. Oglethorpe is uniquely positioned to ensure that our students move from the sudden flash of inspiration to seeing an innovation or entrepreneurial ideal come through to completion. Our faculty teach our students to ask critical questions that challenge baseline assumptions, to pull in disparate content, to feed and grow their idea, and to include diversity of voices and perspectives to nurture the idea through implementation and beyond. At Oglethorpe, we want our entire community to see and believe in the magic of big ideas and provide them the tools and insights to embrace innovations that create positive transformation. David, thank you for your leadership in innovation and entrepreneurship, and for sharing your candid expertise with what undoubtedly will help us all turn our ideas into tangible and impactful outcomes. So now I'm going to turn it back to Dean Kraft for the full introduction. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, the Rikard Lecture Series was established in 1991 to honor Mack A. Rikard, Oglethorpe class alumni of 1937, an honorary degree recipient, an athletic Hall of Fame member, as well as a longtime trustee. Hosted by the Hammond School of Business, the Mack A. Rikard Lecture Series purpose is to introduce students to current issues in business as presented by a top business and civic leader, and you really could be hard-pressed to find somebody who is more fitting for this lecture series than David Cummings. As you understand, David Cummings is an Atlanta-based technology entrepreneur who's founded 10 companies, in fact, employing thousands upon thousands of people. His companies include Pardot, Salesforce, and Terminus. David is also the founder of Atlanta Tech Village, the United States' 4th largest technology hub, and the lead investor in Calendly, the world's most popular scheduling app, which I hope I'm pronouncing correctly. After selling Pardot, David was named as the Ernst Young Entrepreneur of the Year and one of the 100 most influential Atlantans by the Atlanta Business Chronicle. David's a member of YPO Southern and Atlanta Rotary, and if you don't know, YPO is Young President's Organization. He serves on the boards of the Metro Atlanta Chamber, the Buckhead Coalition, and Westminster Schools. A native of Tallahassee, Florida, David earned a Bachelor of Science degree in economics, which pleases us no end at the Hammond School, and from Duke University, and received an honorary doctorate from Mercer University. Please welcome David Cummings.
So I was one of those nerdy kids who, as far back as I can possibly remember, wanted to be an entrepreneur. You know, so as a kid, people say, oh, what do you want to be when you grow up? What are you going to do? What are you going to study in college? And when I was 6 years old, I knew that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. 6 years old. And so, of course, as a 6-year-old, I thought my entrepreneurial endeavor was going to be mowing the yard. And I didn't connect the dots that I had to mow the yard, and it was a chore. But this idea that I could go do something and get paid for it, even at the youngest of ages, just totally resonated with me. So what I want to do today is share my story, my journey, my experience as an entrepreneur, my lessons learned, both successes and failures, and I want to tie those in with a simple framework of entrepreneurship that I'm really fond of. So I'm going to start with the framework because I'm going to relate back to it as I go through these different endeavors. And the framework has 6 parts, very simple. We're in an academic setting, so I'm going to roll with the framework component here. The first question as an entrepreneur is it makeable? Can I create this thing? Can I bring this thing to the world? Maybe it's software. Maybe you're building a new iPhone app. Maybe it's hardware. Maybe you're building a new type of heart monitor. But the first question to ask, is this makeable? The second question in the framework, is this desirable? Is there authentic demand out there? Do people want this thing? As much as it sounds like common sense, the number one reason that entrepreneurs fail at the Atlanta Tech Village, 10 minutes down the road, is that they build something that nobody wants. Right? So think about that. We got the proverbial entrepreneurial light bulb. We're going to go change the world. I implore you, don't do the field of dreams. Don't build it and they will come. Instead, work with potential customers, iterate, listen to their feedback. And so question number 2 in the framework is it desirable? Is there authentic demand? Is there somebody, someone, some company out there that desperately wants what you're building? The third question, and it sounds really simple, these are all simple questions. The third question is it profitable to sell? Right? There's a bunch of different goods and services that we'd like to bring to the world, but for whatever reason, you can't financially make it work. And I've got an example of that, of one of the companies that we worked on. So, can you make a profit from a customer? The fourth question, as part of the entrepreneurial framework, can you profitably acquire a customer? So the prior question is it profitable to sell to a customer if it costs nothing to get that customer? Of course, we know in the startup world that it's very difficult to acquire a customer. Sales, marketing, everything it takes for customer acquisition, there's a cost to that. So if you take the cost of the product and you add on the cost of acquiring the customer, does the math work? Is there still a positive gross margin there? Now the 5th and 6th question, they start to get a little more interesting, and these are more for bigger ideas or bigger outcomes. And we just had one of those recently that I'll talk about in a little bit. But the 5th question is the investment in the business scalable? Can I keep raising money or putting more money into the business and see continual high return on investment? In the software world, that's often the case. Software has high gross margins, typically has recurring revenue, typically has predictability to it. And often you can keep putting more money in and generate high rates of return. In other fields, as we know, you don't generate the economies of scale. You don't have some of those components where if you keep putting money into the business, you keep generating a high rate of return. And the 6th and final question of this framework, is this platformable? Is this something that we can have multiple products that can be introduced in the business? Right? Is this going to be a one-hit wonder? Or once we get scale, once we have a business that's working, can we introduce more products and more services that we can take advantage of our infrastructure? We can take advantage of our sales and support and engineering, all the different components of the business. So the 6-question framework to consider: can I make this? Is it makeable? Does anybody want this? Is it desirable? If I sell one of these things, will I make money off of it? Is it customer profitable? If I have to pay to acquire customers and the cost of the good or service, can I make money with the sales and marketing costs plus the product costs combined? Is the customer profitably acquirable? And then from a big picture point of view, is this a business that I can continue to raise money or reinvest the profits into? Is it investment scalable? And then the sixth and final question, is it platformable? Can I introduce more products and more services over time to build a really large business? So 6 simple questions. And what I've found from my entrepreneurial journey is that over time, the answers to the questions get revealed. As much as we want to sit on our soapbox and pretend like we know where the world is headed, what we've found is that some of our largest success stories, and we've had some amazing success stories at the Atlanta Tech Village, but all of our major success stories, unicorns in the current parlance, a unicorn is a private startup valued at over $1 billion. At the Tech Village, 10 minutes down the road, we have multiple unicorns. Multiple companies that were started right here in Atlanta that are valued in the billions of dollars and they're less than 10 years old. Pretty phenomenal. So my entrepreneurial journey started when I was 6 years old, mowing the neighbor's yard, thinking that I was on top of the world, making what seemed to be an inordinate amount of money. I got paid $10 an hour in the 1980s to mow grass, and I thought I was king of the world. And so mowing grass proceeded to selling baseball cards on the internet, mid-90s. CompuServe, AOL, Prodigy. I figured out a little hack. I thought I was the coolest kid around. I grew up in North Florida. In North Florida, my favorite baseball team, of course, was the Atlanta Braves. This is before Tampa Bay had a team. This is before Miami had a baseball team. And so in the early to mid-90s, there was a big strike in Major League Baseball. And when that big strike occurred, all the baseball cards out there dropped in value dramatically. And it took years and years and years for the baseball cards to come back in value. Since COVID hit in the last 2 years, they've been going gangbusters, the whole collectible space. But I figured out as a teenager, as an early internet user, that I could go on the internet, I could go on news groups. News groups were sort of like Reddit, but more difficult to use. And so I could go on news groups, and I could buy Atlanta Braves players, baseball cards for Atlanta Braves players, from sports card dealers around the United States. So if you had a sports card collectible store in Seattle, you cared about the Seattle Mariners. You didn't care about the Atlanta Braves. And so I could go on these news groups and I could find dealers in other parts of the country. And so I would buy all their Atlanta Braves players. It was primarily Chipper Jones and John Smoltz and Tom Glavine. And so I was spending tons of money, it seemed like tons of money as a teenager, buying these Atlanta Braves baseball players from around the United States, having them shipped to North Florida. And then I would go to the local sports card dealers in Pensacola, Florida, and Tallahassee, Florida, and Jacksonville, Florida, and I would bring them Atlanta Braves baseball player cards, and I would sell it to them at twice what I paid, and then they would sell at retail twice what they paid me. And I thought I was on top of the world. I found a little slice of arbitrage as a teenager on the internet, importing Atlanta Braves baseball cards to North Florida. And so again, I was hooked. And so what was the next place to go? So a sports card dealer that I had sold some Atlanta Braves baseball cards to said, hey, David, now I want to do my own website. I want to sell to the whole internet as well. I don't want to sell just to North Florida. I want to sell to anybody online. And so, of course, as an aspiring entrepreneur, I said, sure, I'll figure out how to build a website. I'll figure out how to do HTML. This is before CSS even existed for any of the techies in the room. So I was making websites for sports card collector dealers, making websites for lawyers and other small businesses. And I was being paid $50 an hour in the late 90s as a teenager. And so I went from my $10 an hour mowing yards to making $50 an hour as a teenager building websites. Now this is in the prehistoric days. There was no, WordPress, there was no Wix, there was no Squarespace, none of these great tools that we have today for website building. And so I would build a website. The customer would pay me, say $1,000 for 20 hours. And so I'd build this beautiful website and turn it over to the small business owner. And as soon as I would turn over that website, I knew without a doubt I was always going to get the same question. And that question was, how do I change it? How do I update it? How do I add more content, more pages to my website? And so after I heard that question enough times, the proverbial light bulb went off again, and it was time to build my first software company. And so I'm a self-taught programmer, full-on computer nerd. I was not a marketing major. The name of the first product was called Super Update. Literally, superupdate.com. And so I went to one of my professors in college. I was a junior in college at the time. I built a bunch of websites. I had this professor my freshman year. And so I took a Computers in Society. It's part of the Focus program at Duke. And so basically it's a small group that has a number of courses in one area of specialty. And so my professor freshman year, he was a foreign language technology professor. So his area of research was using technology to teach foreign languages, but he had always loved technology. And so I had a history of technology class from him my first semester freshman year. And so he said, hey, David, if you ever start a business, if you ever are looking for some help, come see me. And so by my junior year in college, I went to the professor, Professor Borchardt, and I said, I have this amazing idea. This internet thing is going to be incredible. Super Update is how we're going to update and maintain our websites. And so I went to Professor Borchardt and I said, hey, I would like to raise some money from you so that I can hire classmates of mine and we're going to build this content management system. And so he said yes on the spot, wrote me a check for $20,000, and I set out and hired 3 of my classmates at $10 an hour to write code for the summer. So of course, again, I thought I was a kid in the candy store. I rented an office across the street from campus. It cost me $300 a month. I had to sign a 1-year lease. Thankfully, they didn't require a personal guarantee. Thankfully, they didn't require any background check or credit check. And so I had this little office. I had a little sign that was the Profit, and that's Profit. Of course, I love that there's a TV show called The Profit where he helps turn around small businesses. And so I set out. I had $20,000 in the bank. I had 3 classmates at $10 an hour, and we were building the coolest software called superupdate.com. And so Super Update was a system like a WordPress.com before WordPress was invented to make it easy to update and maintain a website. So let's go back to the entrepreneurial framework. Is it makeable? Self-taught programmer, hired some other programmers, had $20,000 in the bank. So we set out and we made Super Update. We spent the entire summer, 90 days, and we had a working prototype. In today's vernacular, it would be known as an MVP, a minimum viable product, something we could take to the market, start to get customer feedback on. The second question in the framework, the second question is it desirable? So is it makeable? Yes. Second question, is it desirable? And so this was the year 2001. We were selling cloud computing software. We were selling software as a service where you would pay $30 a month to be able to update your website completely in a web browser. This was before the world was used to buying software over the internet. This was before small businesses were used to putting their credit card in online. And so we quickly realized, thinking about the entrepreneurial framework, question number 2, is it desirable? Definitively, the answer was no. It was not desirable. people would not put their credit card in to buy a business product over the internet in the year 2001. But as fate would have it, and really it was just dumb luck, we were at a trade show in New York City. We were at the Javits Center, and it was called Internet World. And so I used our last $2,000 to get a trade show booth. I got my friends who were the summer programmers to take their final exams and fly up to New York to help work a trade show booth. I drove up in my brother's Pontiac filled with computer monitors and full-size desktop computers. And as fate would have it, we were able to meet another software company there, a company called GlobalScape, a small publicly traded company, and they were looking for a content management system with which to upsell and cross-sell their existing customer base. They had a product called Qt FTP. They had over 1 million paying customers of this file transfer product. Think about Box or Dropbox, but pre-historic times. And so we licensed the Super Update product to this Texas company from meeting at a random trade show in New York City, and they prepaid $200,000 for the rights to sell it under their own brand. Now, as an aside, they weren't able to sell it either, so that second question around desirability failed for them as well. But for myself, I was over the moon with $200,000 from this Texas company, prepaid royalties, and I knew exactly what I was going to do. I was going to take all the lessons learned from that first product, Super Update, that failed, and I was going to build a new product from scratch. And I was going to make sure and check that second box around desirability. So, the second product was taking the lessons learned. It was a content management system, so think of WordPress, think of a system to update a website, but it was designed for mid-size and larger organizations, and it was installed software. It was not delivered over the internet. It was not $30 a month. So instead of cloud software, this was a product that companies and universities would pay $20,000 for a license, and then they would pay us $2,000 a year for the maintenance and support. And so I took the $200,000 from the Texas company. I moved to Atlanta because my brother was a student here, and we had one customer from our previous product that was based here because a friend of mine in college, his dad was friends with another dad, and we got them to buy a copy of it. So it wasn't desirable, but we were able to sell a copy to an Atlanta company. And so I moved down to Atlanta to be in the office of that one customer in order to build a completely new product with an emphasis on making sure that we checked the box that it was desirable, that there was authentic demand in the market for it. The new product was called Cascade Server. At the time, we got lucky and we figured out that we could buy Google AdWords ads for this category of software. This software category is content management system, web content management. And so back then, we could buy ads on Google, pay per click, where we would bid $1 per click for people who search for the term content management. And so we started buying ads. Today on Google, that same term would be $50 for one click. There's a reason Google is one of the most valuable companies in the world. And so we were able to sell 5 copies of this new product that we built from scratch using our learnings from the previous product. And so this new product was called Cascade Server. Cascade Server solved the problem of more scalable. We could support larger websites, more accessible, so the way that you interacted with it was more accessible to different types of organizations. And it was installed software. The world at that time wanted to buy a piece of software and put it on their own machine and manage it themselves. From those first 5 customers that we sold, 2 of those 5 customers were colleges. One of the colleges was Yavapai College in Arizona, and the other was Eckerd College down in Central Florida. And so we had 5 paying customers. They paid us $20,000 each. 2 of the 5 were colleges. And so I promptly recruited 2 local student interns to cold call all 4,160 2-year, 4-year public and private colleges in North America. At the time, I went down to the Barnes & Noble in Buckhead, right on Peachtree, and I got one of those giant books about choosing the best college for you. And literally, 4,160 colleges and universities in that book. And so we tore the book in half, gave half to one intern, gave half to the other intern, and we just started dialing for dollars. Anybody on any college campus anywhere that would listen to us, whether it was communications or IT or web. And so we blanketed the United States with cold calls from right here in Atlanta, and we were able to sign up 200 colleges and universities. We've generated over $30 million in revenue from that second product alone. Software for updating and maintaining a complex website. The business was growing nicely. We were doing millions of dollars a year in revenue. We were named the number 247th fastest growing company in Inc. magazine as part of the Inc. 500 in the year 2007. But I realized that the world of content management, specifically WordPress, open source software, was creating a really competitive dynamic within the market. And I had this idea. I was very focused on sales and marketing. I had this idea around a better way to do business marketing online. And so I recruited a classmate of mine from college, and we started a new company called Pardot. The name Pardot came, I was on dictionary.com, and at the time, dictionary.com, if you typed in a word, it would show you the dictionary definition, but it would also show you the translation of that word in 29 different languages. It was a way to fill up the web page. And so I typed in marketing. We're going to build some marketing software. So I typed in marketing, and so it gave a definition of marketing, and then it showed the Latvian verb to market or to sell. So that's Latvian, not Latin. And so it showed the Latvian verb to market or to sell. Pardot, P-A-R-D-O-T. And so I went over to GoDaddy.com, I typed in Pardot. Surely nobody has ever registered those 6 letters. And sure enough, I paid $8 and I got Pardot.com. And we were off to the races. So, in that second product from the first business, is it makeable? Yes. Is it desirable? Yes. Customer profitable? Yes. Customers profitably acquired? Yes. But the investment wasn't scalable. Open source software, products at the high end, the low end, the market itself was changing dramatically. And so we set off to build a new company called Pardot, doing online marketing software for businesses. At the time, there were good online marketing tools for businesses that targeted consumers. So MailChimp is an amazing product, Google Analytics, and plenty of others. But at the time, there weren't good tools for businesses to market to other businesses. That was the gap in the market that we had identified, trying to sell our software to universities. So we were a business selling to another business. And so Pardot became the platform of record for business marketers to create, run, and manage their online campaigns. So think of software that does email marketing, landing pages, hooks into the CRM, software that's the system of record. So at the time, if you thought of a category of software, and I said accounting software, most people would say QuickBooks. And so QuickBooks is the most popular accounting software in the world. At the time, there was no de facto standard for online marketing platforms. There was no industry standard. Nobody owned that market. And we set out to make Pardot the platform of record, the de facto standard for online marketers. So is it makeable? Followed the same playbook that we did before, and we hired 11 Georgia Tech interns to work that summer in Atlanta to build the minimum viable product. So myself and my co-founder and 11 summer interns building software in Buckhead. And so we did it. We built a minimum viable product. We took it to market. And I started to hear something from customers that I hadn't heard before. A customer would say, hey, David, I don't know how I did my online marketing before Pardot. And so I started to hear that phrase in different ways. I didn't know how to do my online marketing before Pardot. Pardot really changed the way that these marketers would generate leads, would nurture the leads, would qualify the leads, would hand the leads off to their sales team. And so the business started to grow in a way that I had never seen before. In 2010, the Atlanta Business Chronicle named Pardot the #1 fastest growing technology company in Atlanta. So at the time, they didn't tell us what position we were on the Pacesetter Awards. And so every Friday morning, the Business Chronicle comes out. So I went over to the Disco Kroger on Piedmont, 10 minutes away from here, and I bought a copy of the Atlanta Business Chronicle, and I flipped open to the Pacesetter Awards. And there it was, column 1, company name, Pardot. Column 2, the 3-year growth rate. So 2007 to 2010 inclusive. The Pardot 3-year growth rate, 42,000%. 42,000% growth rate. Now, for any math majors in the room, if you start with a really small number, like a really, really small number, and then get to a number in the millions, it's actually pretty easy to have a 42,000% growth rate. So I'm grateful that the Business Chronicle did not publish our revenue figure, which was barely over 1 million. So we went from barely over 0 to barely over 1 million, and we were named the #1 fastest growing tech company in all of Metro Atlanta. And so, of course, we were thrilled. We used it for our own recruiting. We used it for our own beating our chest as to how great we were as a startup here in town. And then in 2012, we won an even more prestigious award that was even more near and dear to my heart. The AJC named Pardot the #1 best place to work in all of Atlanta. Full page color spread. It had a picture of a millennial riding a Razor scooter down our hallway. And so in this article, the author talked about these unusual and quirky benefits that we provided for our team members. The author talked about the fact that as a company, we had a very simple 2-word vacation policy. Be reasonable. Employees could work anytime, anywhere, a full results-only work environment. We took our central conference room in the building. We had 24,000 square feet in one of the skyscrapers on the backside of Lenox Mall. We took our central conference room and we turned it into a spa with a full-time masseuse on staff. So all employees got massages every week on site. We really wanted to ratchet up our benefits, and so we provided home house cleaning for all employees. Every employee got their house cleaned as a company-sponsored benefit. Now, the author in this AJC article, of course, loved how quirky that was to provide those kinds of benefits. But that wasn't the reason we won the best place to work. In fact, it had very little to do with it. The reason we won the best place to work in Atlanta is that we had the most aligned corporate culture. We had a team with very strong values. And we looked at it two ways. People who are positive, self-starting, and supportive. And so everything we did in the recruiting process, everything we did in our daily stand-up meetings, everything we did in our weekly all-hands meetings, everything that we did in our monthly strategy sessions, everything we did in our quarterly offsites, we would reinforce those values. Positive, self-starting, and supportive. Everything. And then we had a second overarching mantra in the business: be the best place to work and the best place to be a customer. And so we would repeat that all the time inside the office. Be the best place to work and the best place to be a customer. And holding those two things truly above everything else made the really difficult decisions very easy. Every time a hard problem came up, how does this fit in with being the best place to work and the best place to be a customer? And so constantly asking that question, how does it fit in? What's the right answer? The reason we were named the #1 best place to work in Atlanta is that we had the most aligned culture. Everybody was centered around being positive, self-starting, and supportive, and everyone was aligned around being the best place to work and the best place to be a customer. So we won the #1 best place to work in the spring of 2012, and then in the fall of 2012, we announced to the world that we had sold the business for $100 million. We had no investors, we had no VCs. We had never even had a board meeting the day that we sold the company. It was a strange experience, having one's ego, one's identity, one's sense of self wrapped up in this fast-growing business, this business that was winning awards and hiring hundreds of people and making customers really happy. We sold the business on a Tuesday, but we couldn't tell anyone about it until the markets closed at 4 p.m. on Wednesday. So imagine you're 32 years old. Imagine you had called up your bank to ask if there was an upper limit on wire transfers because you weren't sure if you could actually receive that amount of money in your checking account. On Tuesday, the wire hits. You have more money than you ever imagined, and you can't tell anyone about it. It's a publicly traded company that bought the business. It's insider knowledge. And so it was a strange 24 hours going from selling the business, getting the wire transfer, to then announcing it to the world the next day. All the feedback, all the questions, all the congratulations. We had a big party. And then Friday of that same week, I was driving to Midtown to visit a friend, and I was going down the connector. I'd just gone underneath the 17th Street Bridge connecting Atlantic Station to Midtown. And I looked up, and on the left, there was a huge billboard. And the billboard on the connector said, Pardot, the #1 best place to work, and we're hiring. We had billboards up and down the connector to recruit people because we were growing so fast. And here it was, Friday of the week of selling the business. I was alone in the car. I had just seen that billboard for the company that I was no longer employed at. And I just started crying. I broke down in tears all by myself. All this energy and all this excitement and all this hoopla of the whole week just exited my body. It was a very, very strange moment. And so I got to my friend's office in Midtown, a little shaken up, explained the situation, and had this moment of inspiration that came with it. 32 years old, what am I going to do for the rest of my life? I didn't stay on at the acquiring business. I was unemployed. I never had to work again. And this moment of inspiration was, I want to find the biggest building in the best location possible to help increase the chance of other Atlanta entrepreneurs to succeed. Build a community, build a village. So I immediately started shopping, looked at a couple buildings in Midtown, buildings in West Midtown, and the last building that I looked at was in Buckhead, right at the intersection of Lenox Road and Piedmont Road. If you know where the Chipotle is on Piedmont, right off of exit 2 on Georgia 400, there was this big, beautiful 1986 mid-rise that had a lot of deferred maintenance, but in a spectacular location. One of the busiest intersections in Atlanta, a 5-minute walk from the Buckhead MARTA station, 21 restaurants within a 10-minute walk, a Kroger, a movie theater, a 1-acre park. Now we have a 4-mile bike ride down Path 400. And so I walked through this 1986 mid-rise, and I knew right then and there that this was the place to build one of the largest tech entrepreneurship centers in the country for the purpose of increasing the chance of success of the entrepreneurs in the community. We could have the coolest building in the world, we could have the most fun people to hang out with, but if we didn't increase the chance of success, we didn't succeed. So 2 local lawyers actually owned the business. The building was actually underwater because many of the tenants had moved out because they didn't have capital to refurbish the building. At the time, they were asking $17 million for the building. And just like a residential real estate transaction, I offered $10 million. They countered at 14. I offered 12. They countered at 13. And I ended up buying the building for $12.4 million. We have 103,000 square feet, an acre and a half of land, 273 parking spots in our multi-story parking deck. And the building itself was just about as bad as you can imagine a 1986 mid-rise. Lots of granite, lots of old lawyer carpet, old lawyer smell in the building as well. It was very much what you could imagine. Mostly law firms had been in the building, but they had subsequently moved out. And so we closed on December 21st. On the first day of January, I took my 2 little kids at the time, and we went to IKEA. We needed some furniture, we needed some energy, we needed some entrepreneurs in the building, even pre-renovation. And we spent $60,000. Has anybody ever shopped at IKEA? Can you imagine how hard it is to spend $60,000 at IKEA? Now we had a 100,000 square foot building. And so we outfitted 20,000 feet. We took a bunch of old lawyer offices, open bullpens, put in IKEA desks and chairs and lamps and filled up the whole floor, 20,000 feet. That first week of January, and we said, come one, come all to entrepreneurs, $200 per desk per month. And by the end of the first week, 20,000 square feet, we've rented out every single desk, every single office, every single conference room. And so I knew then and there that there was a tremendous amount of pent-up demand for entrepreneurs that wanted to be around each other. They wanted community. They wanted the socializing. They wanted to share the best practices. And so from there, we set out to renovate the entire building. It took about 2 years. Cost $15 million, so we spent more money renovating the building than actually acquiring it. And now we've been open for almost 10 years. And in the 10 years that the Atlanta Tech Village has been open, the startups that are in the building and have graduated from the building have raised over $2 billion of equity. $2 billion of equity. And the startups that are in the building and have graduated from the building are valued at over $10 billion. So that's $10 billion worth of value creation that's occurred in Atlanta, 10 minutes down the road, in the last 10 years. From a community point of view, the main emphasis is on helping entrepreneurs help each other. What I've found is that entrepreneurs are typically good at one thing, typically good at sales or marketing or product development or fundraising. And entrepreneurs love helping each other. Entrepreneurs, by their very nature, are glass half full type people. And so a building with 1,000 desks and 100,000 square feet, entrepreneurs are constantly saying, hey, what are you working on? What's going well? What's not going well? Oh, I know the person for that. Oh, let me make this introduction over here. Oh, I got the best person for you to talk to. And so what we've found is that by having 1,000 people under the same roof, more figuratively in the past 24 months, but literally up until COVID, that those creative collisions, that engineering of serendipity has been unbelievably successful. From a building point of view, our focus is on creating 20,000 high-paying jobs in Metro Atlanta in 20 years. We're 10 years in. We've already created 12,000 of those 20,000 jobs. And I'm 100% confident that we will create more than 20,000 high-paying jobs in Metro Atlanta within our first 20 years of existence at the Atlanta Tech Village. So coming back to the entrepreneurial framework, is it makeable? Let's look at the Tech Village itself. At the time, 2012, the commercial real estate market was really depressed, still coming out of the Great Recession. So, wrote a check, bought a building, checked the box. We made the building side of the is it makeable. Is it desirable? Is there authentic demand? That first week, after having the IKEA furniture in the building, completely sold out. Desirability, authentic demand, off the charts. Is it customer profitable? Because we didn't have a mortgage, we were able to charge a below market rate to the entrepreneurs. So the effective rate for the Tech Village is about $27 a foot. Market rate for an equivalent building is about $10 a foot more. So we charge below market rates, but because we didn't have a mortgage on the building, we were able to make a little bit of money. Is it profitably acquirable for the customers? Word of mouth was phenomenal. One of the best things that we ever did was set up 2 programs. The first program is called the Startup Village within the Tech Village. Last Monday of every month, we still do it now, last Monday of every month, we host the largest monthly gathering of entrepreneurs on the East Coast. Pre-COVID, we would have 450 people show up every single month to hear 3 entrepreneurs give 5-minute demos of their product and 5 minutes of audience Q&A. The Startup Village at the Tech Village, last Monday of every month. And then every Friday, like clockwork, we would host the Startup Chowdown. And the Startup Chowdown is a public weekly networking event for entrepreneurs. Pre-COVID, we would have 200 to 250 entrepreneurs show up for lunch every single Friday with a line out the front door wrapping around Piedmont Road. So by hosting events, by helping spur on the growth of the community, it was the best thing that we ever did in terms of generating demand for entrepreneurs that wanted to be in the community, that wanted to be part of the village. Now that fifth question, investment scalable, the Tech Village was never set up to be a scalable business. It was set up to be the best version of ourselves in Atlanta for tech entrepreneurs. Within the Tech Village, some of our biggest success stories are companies like SalesLoft and Calendly, which does calendar scheduling software, very popular within education. The SalesLoft story. The SalesLoft founder was an entrepreneur that I was introduced to at Pardot. We were trying to recruit a senior sales leader to help run a sales team. A friend of mine introduced me to Kyle, the founder, and so I sat down with Kyle and we were talking about startups and we were talking about entrepreneurship, and he said, "Hey David, I don't want to work for you at Pardot. I want to start a new company. I want to start a software business." And so we sat down and we started brainstorming ideas. We started brainstorming names. The first idea for the business, which was a total failure, was a job change alert. So think about LinkedIn. Now when somebody in your network changes jobs on LinkedIn, it says, "Hey, so-and-so has a new job." Back then, that feature of LinkedIn didn't exist. And so we created that feature, jobchangealerts.com, in an effort to sell it to sales reps who wanted to know when somebody they were trying to sell to or already had sold to had changed jobs. And so going back to the 6-question framework, is it makeable? We hired some software engineers, we built jobchangealerts.com. Going to question number 2, is it desirable? Is there authentic demand? There was no authentic demand for it. It was a nice to have, it wasn't a must have. It was only incrementally better, only 10% better, not 100% better. Evolutionary versus revolutionary. So we went back to the drawing board and worked on a pivot, worked on a new product for SalesLoft. The second product was around helping sales reps find contact information online. So anybody that's tried to find an email address or a phone number of somebody that they want to sell to, it can be very difficult, or you spend lots of money to buy the data. And so we built a service that would pull data from different sources to sell to sales reps. And we quickly realized that while they liked it, we were able to make it, it was makeable, it was desirable, but from a business point of view, they would come in, let me buy 1,000 contacts, and I'm done. So the repeatability of the customer, so it was profitable to sell to a customer, but it wasn't profitable to continuously acquire new customers over and over again. There wasn't a stickiness there. There wasn't an ongoing relationship. So we pivoted into a third product called Cadence. And what we had learned from listening to the customers of the early products, what we learned is that they wanted a system to be able to repeatably reach out to their customers. If you have a sales team, if you have a marketing team, you might say, hey, go make 50 phone calls a day. And the sales rep will put the information inside of Salesforce.com or some other CRM. What we learned is that businesses actually wanted a system. They wanted a program. On day 1, make this phone call. On day 10, send this email. On day 20, send a LinkedIn in-mail message. On day 30, make another phone call with this different message. They wanted to run it through a process, and they wanted to ensure that the software helped to guide the sales rep through that process. And so that's what we built for the third product at SalesLoft. Is it makeable? It's software. We built it with the engineering team. Is it desirable? Is there authentic demand? The demand for it was incredible. Is it profitable? Can we profitably sell to a customer? Software is a beautiful business model, great gross margins. Can we profitably acquire a customer? We were able to show that we could acquire a customer by eating our own dog food. Nowadays, some people call it sipping our own champagne. So we believed that we had to be our best customer for our own product so that when we sold to our own customers, they could see how we used our own product. Is the investment scalable? SalesLoft started out raising a small seed round, a couple $100,000, then a Series A round, a couple $1 million, then a B round, $10 million, then a C round, $50 million, then a D round, $100 million. So we raised over $200 million in the business. As we kept growing, the investment was scalable. We could keep putting more money into the business and keep generating high rates of return. And then that sixth question, is it platformable? Can we introduce multiple products to it? And over time, we layered in products that would help manage the pipeline for the sales reps, products that would help with the call coaching. So when you do a phone call, the software would be able to record it if the prospect opted in, and then you could do asynchronous coaching. The sales manager could listen to the call and provide feedback to the sales rep on how to do a better job. So we layered on multiple products, and 90 days ago, we sold the business to a private equity group for $2.3 billion. Started out as a little idea at the Tech Village, 10 minutes down the road. Went through 3 pivots, job change alerts, the data contacts, and then into the business process management for the sales team. Raised small amounts of money, then medium-sized, then large, then extra large. And 10 years later, sold it as a mega unicorn right here in Atlanta. So, I really appreciate your time today. I really appreciate you being so attentive and listening to the stories. A story of entrepreneurship for myself over many years, from mowing lawns, to baseball cards, to websites, to marketing software, to sales software, to community building through physical spaces. And I'm just really honored to be here. I love entrepreneurship. I love spreading the message. And I really appreciate all of your time. Thank you so much.